Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah ta'ala, pray that everyone is well. We continue with the weekly halaqah this week. We go on to the first slide. And this is where we're going to bring together, conclude the focus on the subject of trees. So it's week 14, the halaqah, concluding the relationship. So we're on to the first slide, please. So we started with Surah Ibrahim and ayat 25, and we'll continue as well. And this is such a profound ayat because we're going to see how the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, also brought this ayat to life, taught this ayat to the companions. And if we really understand this, so last week was the week before, we just looked at trees in general, relationship between people and trees. And if we've, there's still so much to unpack in these ayats, of course. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept what we're just trying to do here. And if we understand these ayats, it really helps us understand who is a Muslim, what is Islam, and the whole purpose of our journey and the role of us as a Muslim and as a ummah on this earth, inshallah. So in Surah Ibrahim, so the ayat begins with Alam tara kayfa daraballahu mathalan kalimatan tayyibatan kashajatin tayyiba asluha thabitu وَالْفُرْعَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. That have you not considered how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents an example? So we've worked out also from the Mufassirin that there's this word which is like this good word which is like a good tree is in fact the kalima. Some Mufassirin say it can imply any good word that comes out of a Muslim's mouth. And that's very important, and we can highlight that in the khutbah hajjah that the imams recite every Friday. But here, the general opinion, it is in relation to the kalima, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And so the good word is an example of making a good word like a good tree where its roots are firmly fixed in the ground and its branches high in the sky. In the second ayat here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, so it's a separate ayat. It produces the fruit all the time by permission of the Lord, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents the example for people that perhaps they may be reminded. So the first part is the seed goes into the ground, the sapling comes out, and it grows. But everything is through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only, okay, this is why this is in a separate ayah. It is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will decide if there's going to be fruit grown. So you can plant, you can cultivate your land, you can plant your seeds, you can design your garden as you would do in permaculture, but nothing is going to happen. Nothing's going to grow into flowers or fruit or vegetables unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the permission. And remember that this ayat, although we are looking at and we're trying to gain lessons, was first and foremost directed to the Prophet. And we return to Alam tara kayfa. So do you not observe? Okay, observe. So the tree. So we see, if we just go on to the next slide, we see that now this is where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, is trying to explain what this tree is in relation to this ayat, that he asks the companions that there is a tree which is like a believer. Okay, so we've now gone from the seed, which is there in the ayat, to now a tree that is grown and becomes like a believer. So we're talking about a well-established tree. And in relation to this ayat, it is the palm tree. but we can understand it depending on where we are in the world with a large tree. Okay, let's go on to the next ayat. So when the Prophet was looking at the tree, obviously it's a complete tree. And, Allah is saying to us to observe a tree, but the tree didn't just happen. Okay. So it has to start from the very beginning. So the seed has to be put into the ground and it goes through the gradual process of growth. Seed to the sapling. It's a gradual growth. And this is a universal law. This is a sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything happens according to the laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out. And we have to understand these laws and we have to live by them. And these universal laws are there in the Quran. Okay, so it's very important that when we are looking at the tree, so we're taking the command to look at Surah Ibrahim, to go and look at a tree. We're seeing a tree. We're seeing a tree as according to that hadith of the Prophet in Amina Shaduri, that there is a tree like a believer. It's full, it's bright, its roots are in the ground, strong trunk, and leaves and fruit. But obviously, it's going through a whole process. And this process is very key. Remember, from this ayat, we're trying to understand what is a Muslim, what is Islam, what is the purpose of the Ummah, okay? What is our role on earth? That's so fundamental, these deep fundamental lessons in Surah Ibrahim, ayat 24 and 25, okay? Once we start to think like this, our whole relationship with trees will completely change. Next slide. And so we can go back to how, so we saw in the previous slide that we go from the seed and we go to the sapling and then we grow into a tree. Well, how long would it take to get to a large tree in a forest? For example, we've explored many times, you can see it on our website, we've explored science, which is now an ecologist in America, I forget her name now, but she wrote a book called The Mother Tree. A large, strong tree, okay? But any large tree, how long does it take to get to that stage? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? No, we're talking about maybe 100, 150 years, okay? And so it's a gradual process. So this gradual process is a key fundamental lesson for us to understand. And if we go to a forest, we go to a wood, we can see that there's different trees of different sizes. Okay, so there's 7 layers, and here we outline different the 7 key layers within a forest. Very important that we understand these. Okay, and if you understand these, okay, and you could highlight them again when you go to a forest, you go into a wood, you will start to see that forest, that wood, in a completely different light. Okay? Very important. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just go back to the ayat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the Prophet, because the revelation was given first to the Prophet, to him to look at the tree, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to observe, yes, it's to observe, but it's also to think. The tree didn't disappear as a full tree, it's gone through a journey to get to the size of that tree. Okay, go on to the next slide. And to get to that size from the seed, to go through all this gradual process according to the universal laws, is the same laws that we see and hence in the whole universe. And that's why we look at the principles of nature. How does the natural world operate? Okay, it operates through this mizan. It operates through this constant balance. Okay, so all those principles of nature and how they work, they're operating within a forest, they're operating within that single tree, they're operating within the universe, they're operating everywhere. Hence, Allah is saying to us, why don't you observe and to think and to ponder about all of the creation around. Everything is in this mizan. Next slide. And once we start to think like this, then we're moving into the correct way of thinking, okay, which is what we call, is what science call it today, systems thinking. But that's how we study the Quran. That's the Quranic view of life compared to the Western view of life, which is through a Descartes, a reductionist, a silo understanding of the world, that everything is in its silos. And I've used this particular slide because this is the slide that, in relation to, I can't think of a name at the moment, but if you look onto our website, it's all there in relation to the study of the mother tree, which is the science of the mother tree and how this large tree with its roots and its fungi are feeding and connecting into all the other trees, and how that connects to what we're trying to explain today, the sort of Ibrahim, that the key fundamental tree within a forest is connected to all these other trees of the same species, but also other species, and also everything else around. So we have a complete ecosystem. So this seed to the sapling, when it's going through the gradual process, change is happening, okay, not just with a seed, but change is happening around the whole environment, okay? The seed is going through the changes, but there's a system also being developed, okay? And that's what we then branch out into understanding the subject of ecosystems. Next slide. Again, Mecca to Medina. So Surah Ibrahim is a Meccan surah. So we have to start to think and ponder what was taking place in Mecca. Okay, the majority of the Sharia, the laws, were not coming down until Medina. The Islamic State hadn't been established in Mecca. That happened in Medina. The Muslims were in a minority, and the key fundamental lesson that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was trying to focus on in Mecca was to instill the kalima, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, okay, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasul, which is the seed which is connecting us to ayat 24. So the process started in Mecca with the seed. And we can say that in Mecca, we got to the stage with a number of companions, because the Muslims were in a minority, where then we moved up from the seed to the sapling. It wasn't until we moved to Medina, now the tree is established. And now we can really begin to picture when the Prophet is saying that there is a tree like a believer, inna min ash-shajari, farijul lil-mu'minin. Okay, so now Muslims have gone to Medina, they've established themselves, and now that they become like a tree. SubhanAllah. See how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing this ayat 24 and 25 through imagery alive through trees. That's why if you really understand these ayats here, you can never look at trees in the same way ever again. Next slide. And this connects us to understanding social change, because that is what was taking place. So in actual fact, the entire, my dear brothers and sisters, the entire, or the central focus of the Quran is human beings. It's human beings as individuals and as collective bodies. In the same way as a forest, we start with the individual seed to the sapling to one tree, hence ayat 24. But then we have to move into a collective number of trees and a forest to make a community. Okay? And as I said, the central focus of the Quran is the human beings as individuals and as collectives. Hence, we need to take great lessons from the revelation appearing in Mecca and then the revelation appearing in Medina. Go on to the next slide, and let's just explore a little bit more about levels of change. We can break them down into primary and secondary. Primary level changes, okay, these are changes that relate or occur to in the idealistic factors within a society, how a society is founded, such as worldviews, ideology, beliefs, visions, values, morals, and attitudes. We'll see a little bit later on that today people often discuss the iceberg theory. So we see the iceberg on the outside, but all what I've just explained here is actually happening beneath the water, what we cannot see. They would be classified as primary level change. The second level is what we call as a secondary level change. So this level is looking at the material factors. Okay, the material factors that are that changes and are occurring in society. And sadly, today in the world, that's the key focus, just on the material aspects. You know, success is economics and growth and growth and growth and growth. And that first level is completely just disconnected from humanity completely. Hence, the Quranic central focus is humans, the individuals, and then the collective body. Okay, go on to the next slide. Remember those two levels of change I said to you, the primary and the secondary. But there's also a divine principle of change. Okay, because we have to understand the Islamic perspective. So any country, any university or academic would understand those two levels of change, primary and secondary. But for us as Muslims, from an Islamic perspective, there is a divine principle of change. And the divine principle of change is what we're going to come up to. So let's go to this surah and just look at the translation here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised of those who have believed. Okay. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِي آمَنُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised those who believe. So first of all, we have to become believers. And that is the first key ayat that comes up in the khutbah hajjah that we recite on a Friday. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Who have believed among you and done righteous deeds. So believe and righteous deeds all comes together. That he will surely grant them succession. Now, when we look in translations, the word close to Khalifa, vicegerency, caretakers of earth, which is a key component of the principles of Parsi, succession keeps coming up. Okay? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then decide who will become the king. He will surely grant them succession authority upon the earth, just as he granted to those before them, that he will surely establish them, okay, their religion on earth. Succession, okay. And so succession, again, to become the Khalifa, and we're not up to that position yet. May Allah give us that position. But that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Western civilization didn't happen overnight. If we look at capitalism, the Western worldview has been here for over 500 years. Okay, to get us to think through this Western worldview in this Descartes reductionist way happened since the 16th, 17th century. It didn't happen overnight. So the Ummah, okay, we have to start to think like the seed, like the sapling. We start to need to prepare now. We need to plan for 30, 40, 50, 70, 90, 100 years plus. But we're not doing that. We are so far down the rabbit hole, we're just living for the now. We don't know what to do. We need to strategize, we need to plan and follow the natural order like the tree. Okay. So the word succession is important because when we look at the natural world, we can understand this very easily through ecological succession. So take a piece of land, it's a barren piece of land, and if we just left the land through ecological succession, and you go back to that slide with the 7 layers, you go back to Surah Ibrahim, ayat 24, we would see then eventually that whole piece of land through the ecological succession would become into a climax. ecological climax. It would reach its ultimate, okay, which would be a forest. But it has to go through the universal laws. It can't happen just out of nowhere, okay? But for us, become Khalifa, we have to become believers, okay? And we have to do good deeds. And now we have to look to the individual where we are with that, okay? Very important. Next slide. So the divine principle of change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just go on to the next slide. So I said to you, when we look at social change, which is a massive discussion, academics, whether we're in sociology, psychology, whatever field, there's different meanings for understanding social change, but definitely there's two levels, the primary and secondary. But for us as Muslims, there's the divine principle. And it's here. For each one are successive angels before and behind him who protect him by the decree of Allah. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the condition. Inna Allah la yughayyiru, will not change the condition, okay? Hatta, until they change what is within themselves. That is the divine principle. Every letter, every word, every ayah, every surah, okay, is an ayah. It's a sign. And we always go back to patterns, relationship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so for this social change to happen, this divine change, the principle to happen, you've got to go back to the primary factor, the change of that, what is within, not the materialistic. In Allah, la yughayyiru. Look at the word yughayyiru. It starts, this is where we're focusing on the pattern, subhanallah. This connects us to nazm of the Quran, structure, coherence, and order. The word here is a ya, but it has a dhamma, so it's, we couldn't see, if we break it down, it's going in a diagonal direction. It's like someone going on a path, on a diagonal path, okay? But we can call it a straight path, but it's diagonal. We're trying to bring this word alive. And then we go to the Ghain with a fatha, and then we go to the shadda, okay? And that's where we are from the Tajweed perspective, the Arabic perspective, where we are pronouncing the letter twice. Okay, we're circling around in order, and it ends with a ra, back onto the dhamma, which is the same direction as the first letter. So this is a lesson for us in when Allah says he will not change the condition. The word here, change. We're going down one direction. Now we're not sure. We need to just check, to go through the tafakkur, to change within ourselves. Okay, I'm on the straight path. I'm making mistakes. Okay, I'm still doing A, B, and C, and so I need to change. Okay, and that change is in the Quran with a fatha, and then the ya with the shadda. I make the change. Okay, that circle change. I correct myself through the tazkiyah, and then I continue on my journey. Isn't that amazing? Subhanallah. Okay. Allah will not change the condition to the change that is within themselves. That's the divine principle of change. And it goes back to ayat 24 and ayat 25. If you don't make these changes, my dear brothers and sisters, then, which is not for this lesson, as you go a little bit further on in Surah Ibrahim, then the last one then says where the outcome is then you become like the badge. Go on to the next example, the next slide. And we referred to the iceberg, okay, that we today are just focused on what we can see. We're just looking and observing the horizontal plane, which is what Shaitan wants us to do. What can we see? Okay, and so we go back to ayat 24. Alam tara kayfa. Observe the tree, but observe, yes, by looking, but that's what we do today. We just look, and we're living in a world where we don't think. our school children don't think we're living in a world where we're just obtaining information. No wonder we've got all a breakdown in society and all of these mental illnesses. But the key change is what is happening beneath the iceberg. And that's where we go on to those primary factors. The secondary factors is what we can see, okay, outside. What's the event? What's happening? What's causing it? What's causing the breakdown of society today? Political, economic, social, environmental, which is why we started Heart C, is because how we see in the world, okay? Everything being disconnected. And that goes back to what is beneath the water, our core beliefs. Next slide. The message is so simple. Subhana, it's so simple. The lessons all around us. What did we say in the first week? Was it something like 3 trillion trees on planet Earth? And they are an external organ that we cannot do without. Photosynthesis. It's an external organ. We depend on trees. And so this tree, and include the ayat 25, with its roots in the ground, strong trunk, its branches, its leaves, and if Allah wills, its fruit, you get this beautiful tree, okay? And that's where that hadith of the Prophet, inna min ash-shatari qarujulil mu'minin, verily there is a believer like a tree, okay? And this is what we need to be like. This is what the lesson to the Prophet was: look at the tree, okay? Make sure you plant the seed in Mecca and transition the transformation, okay? And then those companions who were involved in shirk, etc., idol worship, they were being transformed, and they were going from the seed to the sapling into the tree, which they could understand, they could connect to. They became farmers of the palm trees, of the khajur, of the date in Medina. Yeah? And they understood the trees. In that hadith, Abdullah, the son of Khattab, he knew what the tree was. And when the Prophet, peace and blessing upon him, posed a question to the senior companions, they also knew the trees. So they already had a relationship with trees. And sadly, we don't. Although, when we was talking about the relationship between people and trees the other week, we do have a deep relationship with trees, because when we looked at that sycamore tree that was cut down, so we do have a relationship, okay, and it's an internal one, okay, which connects us to the primary factors. Everything is connected, my dear brothers and sisters, and that's the whole point of Heart C, to begin to see, to think with the heart. Next slide. And when you have this perfect tree, we go back to patterns of relationships, okay? We go back to the pattern, the key fundamental pattern that surrounds the trees, surrounds the fruit, surrounds the humans, surrounds the earth, okay, which is the toroidal field. The tree is established in the ground. It mimics the external. External mimics, okay, what's beneath the ground, okay? It mimics and it connects us to the beautiful toroidal pattern that we see throughout the entire universe, because all these universal laws will manifest this toroidal field. Please understand that all of the universal laws that happen around, everything to happen around, through the birds, the mountains, the trees, the human, okay, when everything is in mizan and divine order and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's given this beautiful toroidal field surrounding divine order. But this divine order is not what Iblees wants us to see. Hence, we just focus on the secondary levels of social change, which is horizontal, the materialistic. Next slide. And even the heart. Okay, research is done now. I've done some work with a science institute in America called Heart Math, where they looked at the heart, how it resonates with the heartbeat of the heart is in resonate. It resonates with this in the same frequency as the earth to get this, as you can see here in this slide, this toroidal pattern. So the human is mimicking the pattern, the shape of what? The tree. Okay. The human is mimicking the same pattern as the tree. And this is why Allah says that He's created the human in the best of form. You either grow in the best of form like a tree through the gradual stages, okay? And Allah throughout the Quran goes through the gradual process of change, of development. And it begins in the second ayat of Surah Halaqah. After we go from the macro then into the micro. We talk about Allah talks about the embryo and the development, and it's there in other ayats in the Quran. Then you have this beautiful toroidal field around. And if we don't follow this divine system, these universal laws, then we end up like the bad tree, which is later on in Surah Ibrahim. Next slide. Mizan, okay, is due to this toroidal pattern. We've got to start to look, observe, see, and this all connects to thinking. And why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also not just the seeing and the thinking with the aql, seeing and the thinking with the qalb, but in the majority of cases in the Quran, the other sense comes first, which is hearing. Hearing. Next slide. Except illa, okay, the one who comes to Allah biqalbi salim, with pure heart. This qalb salim. We all have to pray. We all have to fast. Inshallah ta'ala, we have to follow the 5 pillars of Al-Islam. Okay, that's for everybody. Okay. The only ones that are going to be successful, illa, who come in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the qalb salim, that heart that is pure, that has grown like the truth, that is in divine order, which is following the pattern, that toroidal field that we saw in that slide there of the 2 humans, which is a slide which is done by Heart Math, where the heart is in frequency with the earth, and the heart can also affect the frequency within a certain distance from each human being. Okay? And that connects to our akhlaq and our behavior and how we change society, and connects to what we're trying to talk about today, which is about change. Okay? Qalb as-salim. Where did all this start? The seed in Surah Ibrahim, ayah 24. And of course, the example that we must follow is that of Ibrahim alayhi salam, because we are covering the Surah Ibrahim. Next slide. And we refer to the khutbah, okay? So when we are listening to the khutbah on Friday, this Islamic system, which began to develop in Medina, this Islamic system to be established on earth, okay? Khalifa, Allah will give succession, but we have to understand that this is a long-term role. We have to individually, collectively, as a community, as a family, we have to plan ahead with all of the political things and all of the things that are going on in the world today. How we're continually asking ourselves as an ummah, the genocide in Palestine, and everything, the crisis that the Ummah is in. How do we go forward? And we want quick-term solutions, but no, we have to go back to the Quran. We have to go through this process. And to become the good tree, to become the mother tree, would take 100, 150 years, my dear brothers and sisters. We have to plan ahead. Whoever's listening to this day, this halaqah today, you know, inshallah ta'ala, will be on this earth maybe 30, 40 years. And if whatever we try and start today and plan, we may never see the outcome. But as long as we plant the seed, hence the hadith, if the world is going to end, plant the seed. By planting the seed, you'll be getting, inshallah ta'ala, to establish the networks which is happening beneath the ground, like in Surah Ibrahim. Establish the seed, it connects, it buries itself in the ground, not too deep, but then and it starts to network out. That's what we have to do. We have to plan. Okay? So Surah Ibrahim is about a Muslim. Islam, it is about the role of Khalifa, changing a society. Okay? Next slide. So this khutbah, okay, sorry, I just the khutbah that we listen to, it starts with a focus on the one person. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. Starts with the one person. When Allah says, those who believe, revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and die not except in the state of al-Islam. That's the individual. Okay? And that connects to the role of Khalifa that we saw in the previous ayat. The second ayat is then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually talking, revealing that in Medina, Ya ayyuhan nas, where the Muslims have gone to Medina, the Islamic State has been established, but now the Muslims are living in a pluralistic society with Jews, Christians, atheists, and pagans. And then understanding that now in our business transactions and everything we do, it's got to be done correctly. And to fear Allah, even those that don't believe, who are not Muslims, fear Allah when you do your transactions, because we all come from Adam and Eve. We all have the same mother and father. And in the last ayat, it's about good words and how it's about the husband and the wife and the community and the good words, which again connects to Surah ayat 24 of Surah Ibrahim, okay, which connects to the Qalb as-Salim, which connects to that slide where you saw the two humans with the heart. Because if the heart is in the Qalb as-Salim, that means that the good character, the behavior, the good excellent qualities that we're trying to learn from the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will come into our lives as well. Because Allah will not change the condition hatta, until, look at that word, yughayyiru, dhamma, hatta, shadda, and back to the dhamma. Next slide. And so we're just going to end, because we put this quiz out. What can you see? Can you get? Do you recognize any pattern? Well, we can say, if we was in this beautiful location, we would see all of the patterns. And we can connect to the patterns, which we can understand in the design concept in permaculture. But the ultimate pattern, because this is creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would be the toroidal field. But just look closely. We are seeing an ecosystem here, and we are seeing systems within systems. Systems within systems. It's a hold-on within a hold-on. It's like a Russian doll within a Russian doll on top of a Russian doll. And lastly, what time of year do you see? You're seeing autumn. Can you see that, my dear brothers and sisters? The change of the leaves, autumn, which subhanallah brings us back. Transition, transformation, change. change is always taking place. It happens according to the universal laws, the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Any questions, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Quick question about this. Is it called toroidal field? This is the first time I've come across this. Could you explain a little bit more about what this field is?
It's if you look at all of the patterns, if you just go to the study of permaculture, and how you would design your garden, for example, and whether we look at and look at the principles of nature. So we see water, like in this slide here, we see a wave pattern of wind, a wave pattern of breeze, and then you have a cycle pattern, cycle of the solar system, the cycle of water. So all these different patterns. And then you have a nested pattern, for example, a nested pattern that you'd see within a beehive, within fruit. Okay, so these are all patterns that we're not used to seeing because we don't look. And if you put them all together, the key fundamental pattern that is throughout the whole universe is the toroidal pattern, and it's like a figure of 8. Okay, you'll see it in an apple, you'll see it in the waggle dance of a bee, you'll see it on this pattern of, which connects us to it's an energy field of the natural frequency, the electromagnetic waves that surround a human being, and this energy, this perfected energy of electromagnetic waves also is surrounding the Earth, surrounding all of the planets, and so this frequency, this harmony that connects us. And so that's why we have a relationship with trees, because the trees are emanating with this toroidal field, and all of the natural elements, the nature's patterns are also, if you dissect the tree, are within the tree. Likewise, the branching pattern of the twig inside the leaf, those patterns that we see around the world are also within us. Okay, the cycle pattern within our ears. So all of the patterns we see in the natural world are also within us, and the overriding key pattern, when you put them all together, is this toroidal pattern. But that's connecting to energy, resonance, frequency, and electromagnetic waves.
Right, and so I've read somewhere or heard somewhere that the diseases in the body could be healed through this different frequencies. Yes. And one reason those essential oils work in aromatherapy is to do with matching the frequency. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Yes, I mean the Quran is a cure, isn't it? And that's one of the names for Surah Al-Fatiha. There was a time, my dear brother, that when the Ummah was connected together, when we were fed in the masjids, when we were reciting Surah Al-Fatiha as an Ummah together, there was this field, this shield protecting the whole of the Ummah, just from Surah Al-Fatiha. But now we're not going to the masjids. It's so simple, because now we're just united, this protected field, this natural frequency, because everything in everything connected with the Quran and tajweed, the science of tajweed, etc., begins with sound. Everything in creation began with sound. It will end with sound. The first mission to the Prophet in Surah Jummah was to recite, not teach, just to recite. That's to do with sound. The Quran is to be heard. Hence, when Allah talks about the senses, hearing always comes up before seeing, apart from just, I think it's one or two ayahs, which is then a change. And science is just showing this now through the science of cymatics.
Science of what? Sorry?
Cymatics. Cymatics.
Okay. There's something called bioresonance as well.
Yep.
Especially they use copper.
It's yes. That's all. It's all there. It's all to do with the vortex. Yes.
So they say that it can protect you from like all these waves, radio waves, like mobile Wi-Fi signals.
Yes.
How does it work?
That's not for the. I mean, that's a massive subject, my dear brother.
Okay. Sorry.
But you're definitely on. But you're definitely on the right path. But always remember, nothing protects you, because if
of course.
you're saying that protects you, then you move into shirk. It's Allah that protects you.
Yeah, but from a scientific point of view, so it can absorb all this radiation stuff, and okay. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum, brother. I think you know about the nature's patterns. You did the outdoor madrasa course with us. It was part of that. So if you can go and have a look at those notes, the toroidal field and other nature's patterns were all in that course, inshallah.
Okay, mashallah. Okay, because I can't seem to. Maybe I missed a session, probably. Okay, I'll go back, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah, you can close up, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
We can close you.
Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, Rasulullah, wa salam, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, wal asl and sabbatus, ila ladina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr, rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.